Welcome back to Property Playbook. We're your hosts, Elena Saradidis
and Erica Reddy-Choquette.
And today we're talking all about the weather in Toronto.
I mean, how are we not talking about the weather? I feel like every single email I've gotten in my inbox today is like, I really hope you survived the storm. I hope this, I hope that. So for anyone that doesn't know that is listening, we had like the most amount of rain we have ever had in the span of, I think it was an hour and a half. We had about a meter of rain.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And not just that, the amount of phone calls we had within that hour of basements are flooding, roofs are leaking, everything is going to hell. Like, what is going on? Have we hit a tropical climate in Toronto?
I mean, that I cannot answer. Certainly not going to pretend to be a meteorologist here. Or, I mean, I guess that's not even what meteorologists do.
No, they're not, but it's okay. We're real estate agents. That's what we do. That's what we're good at. Don't ask us about any other topic. We can't answer it.
But I think this is a really great segue because I have this conversation with clients all the time. When you're buying, I find I have people when they're looking to buy, they say to me, Erica, I really want to buy a house because I don't want to pay maintenance fees. And I stop them in their tracks and I say, I appreciate that you don't want to pay maintenance fees, but when you are owning a home, it still requires a tremendous amount of maintenance. And you should effectively be paying yourself a maintenance fee for these rainy day situations that if God forbid you need to do something with your home and you need the, the surplus of cash to do it, you've got that, reserve fund or that maintenance fee tucked away to maintain your home.
And pun intended, rainy day fund. Like, this was actually one of those instances where people did need emergency people out there to patch their roofs quickly or throw a tarp on it. We needed dehumidifiers. Let me tell you, if you were out looking for a dehumidifier the other day, there were none in the city. I had people hunting dehumidifiers and those commercial grade ones to take water out. Like, we now have in storage dehumidifiers for if this happens again. And it's not just for my own personal properties. My clients were calling me like, what do? We just closed on the house. Like, is it the owner's responsibility? Like, is it the past owner's responsibility? Is it my responsibility? And I simply said this: the owner could have owned the house for years and this not have occurred. But the amount of rain we had in that time span is what happened. And now we have leaks.
Absolutely. And I think it's hard. Like, I mean, I say to people all the time, it can be so hard. To your point, someone may have never had a leak for 20 years of owning their home. And on the next day that you own it, you happen to have a leak and you've done all the diligence and the inspection and you've checked and you've moisture read and all of this and nothing showed. And then all of a sudden, all it takes is a little pinhole or the downspout not being properly routed or frankly, just too much water. And all of a sudden you have water in your basement that you've never experienced before. And it's awful. It's a terrible feeling. It's scary. Where do you start? Do you start with insurance? Do you start with calling an emergency services crew? Do you do
Apparently you call me.
Or do you call a real estate agent? But I think this is where it's probably two parts that I think I want to touch on kind of today with this segment is one is how do you be preventative? So that, you do the best you possibly can to avoid these situations. And then two, when you're in the thick of it, what do you do? Because, when it is on you and it's not on somebody else, you got to figure out how to react. So
it's not just that. It's also if you're a landlord and it happens to your tenanted property, your tenants are now freaking out. How do you handle the situation? First thing, you need to figure out where the water's coming from and stop it.
Yes.
So this happened to my own personal property. We started this conversation before we even turned on the cameras. I had a leak from the ceiling. The roof is brand new, but it's a year old. And like sometimes the caulking wasn't done properly or maybe like a little crack happened. It happens. Like this is not like...
It doesn't take much.
And it's not like we could have prevented this in any way, shape, or form. It's a brand new roof. But we had an issue. And I called one of our handymen and I was like, listen, like I need someone to run over there with a huge tarp and tarp the flat roof right now. And they went in the middle of the rainstorm and tarped the roof because at that moment it's preventative. We need to stop this, like the damage from getting worse than what it's already here. After the rain stops, we can send someone up on the roof. We can get it repaired. We can get it patched. We can get it recaulked. We can repair whatever internal has gotten water on it. But we need to figure it out right now. I had another client of mine call me, and actually the tenant called and said, "Hey, we just walked into the basement, and the basement has water. It's a brand new renovated basement." I'm like, "What do you mean it has water? Turn on your FaceTime." And the people in the office were watching me yesterday. I was like, I was the emergency hotline for everyone. They're like, there's water. And I'm like, oh my, there's water. I called the landlord. I was like, I'm going to get dehumidifiers for you right now. I've sent someone out. They're going to every single Home Depot, every single Canadian Tire. We're going to find something. But you need to call your, like the guy that built your house and tell him to get over there right now.
Yeah.
Like we had massive, and like, again, it depends on like the scale that you're working with, how many tenants, how many whatever. But I had at least 12 calls yesterday regarding rain in the property.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon. It could happen to anyone. It doesn't matter if it's brand new or like an, 100-year-old home.
Yeah.
It just takes this amount of rain in this time span for something to happen.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, listen, so John, my home inspector, I love him dearly. And every time we do these inspections, I feel like people kind of almost like roll their eyes because he'll be like, you know what? Every 3 to 4 months, every time it rains, you need to walk outside and you need to look at the foundation of your home. You need to watch where the water is flowing. You need to watch where the water is pooling. You need to actually take an active approach to how is my home doing in the climate? Same with snow. And I feel like everyone's like, yeah, whatever. And then, it takes a massive event. Fortunately, let's hope it doesn't cause a flood, but if it does, to then be like, you know what, I probably should be out on like preventative maintenance. So that's one thing that I think is really important is you can't always get ahead of it, but you can definitely get ahead of maintenance in the sense of, okay, are you regularly maintaining getting your eaves troughs and your gutters cleaned out? Are you watching the slope of the soil to make sure it's not going towards your house, but away from your house? Are you checking to make sure that your eaves troughs are all still connected and pulling water away from your house? Catch the theme? Away from the house.
Also, keep in mind, if you have eaves troughs that go directly to the sewer and there's a clay pipe down there, there is a likelihood that in its lifespan, it could crack. And if it cracks and you don't realize that it's cracked, the water is hitting the side of your foundation and eventually you're gonna have to cut it and bring it out into the street.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have water in your basement. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
And those things should be kind of in that preventative, camp. Same thing. If you've got a sump pump, have you checked it? Is the backup battery working? Is it working? Is it plugged in? The number of times I see sump pumps in houses and they're not even plugged in. I'm like, what is the point of having a sump pump if it's not operational?
But I have one level up from this. Sub pump failed. Someone told me this story today. Sub pump failed because it was plugged in, but the electrical also went out.
Right.
Like,
and I mean,
we had a huge issue
and then
yesterday.
you could have a backup battery or generator technically for the sump pump. But again, I think the big thing is how do you make sure that you are constantly working on the preventative angle? Because you have spent a tremendous amount of money on your investment and on your home. And the last thing I want anybody to do is deal with Mother Nature taking over the house because it's invasive.
And one extremely good tip to take away, if you're a homeowner, we live in Canada, do not shovel your snow towards the side of your house. Like, you need to not push the snow to the side of your home because when it melts, all the water, where do you think is going? Like,
down the side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to make sure when you're shoveling your snow, it's not on the side. Like, don't shovel towards the side of your house.
Mm-hmm. And listen, when you haven't owned a home maintenance is daunting and there's a lot to learn. And I mean, I think it's just so important to always think, how do you think preventative? How do you get, like, I'm not saying you have to go and figure out how to like excavate dirt away from your home or this or that, but there's certain things where I think it's really additive to do on the regular. And I mean, just like I want to say, just like you're ideally changing your, batteries in your smoke detectors and CO2 detectors, the maintenance should be a very similar protocol. Make sure that you or someone is getting up on the roof a couple times a year to make sure that, the nails, maybe if they're popping or caulking is necessary or any of these things, because you want to keep water away and you want to make sure that, everything is not just that there's no way for anything to be getting in.
And like another cute little tip, if you live in like a semi or a row house and your neighbor is doing their roof and you see them doing it, just like call up and be like, can you take a look at my roof too? And just let me know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I've had roofers go and take a photo of my roof and be like, this is how it looks like. You don't really need to get it done yet, but you have this life expectancy.
Totally.
And I said, perfect, give me your card.
Yeah.
And they're more than happy to look at it, even more detail after you say that.
Yeah. And I mean, the beauty too is even if you don't want to get up on the roof and you've got somebody like, I've used like a painter's extension pole with the phone on it and you just take a video. And again, you just get some aerial footage because I'm not necessarily encouraging everyone to get on their own roof.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
We don't want anybody getting injured. But again, I think the big thing is really, are you on top of your maintenance? Are you on top of your home? Are you understanding the things that can sometimes lead to water damage? And listen, I'm not saying that anyone could have potentially avoided the water damage that we had from the most recent storm, but I think it's a really great reminder to get on top of what you can get on top of.
Again, great points. But again, that's the key word. There's not a lot of things that we could have done to prevent what happened because it was out of a lot of people's control. No one expected that much rain in that amount of time.
No.
And no one had, at least from the calls I was getting, they never had any issues.
No.
Until yesterday's storm.
Yeah.
That's kind of when we realized, oh my gosh, there's some problems creeping up. It just needs a little hole somewhere and that much water, and eventually you'll see it. Like that's the name of the game.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's a wrap for this episode.
Absolutely. This is a quick, easy things you should think about. Preventative.
Yeah. So basically have a little bit of a rainy day fund. Stuff does happen. And when stuff does happen, make sure you have a couple of contacts that are your emergency contacts. Things go sideways. Who do I call? Do I have someone that will tarp my roof? Do I have someone that has dehumidifiers? Also, you should all have a dehumidifier in your basement, regardless of the temperature, regardless of the weather. Like that should be a standard in my homeowner package. Like have a dehumidifier.
Absolutely. And I always say to people, like, forget the dehumidifier with the little tank that you have to empty. Like literally get the dehumidifier that allows you to take the like hose and plumb it like directly into the floor drain and run that dehumidifier 365 days of the year. Basements are just, they were never meant to be occupied, and we've gotten greedy with our space and we've occupied them and they're damp. So you need to pull that moisture out.
Once again, it's Elena Saradidis
and Erica Reddy-Choquette.
And this was Property Playbook. If you like content like this, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.